The God Saga, Saga 4. Chapter 13. The Rise of God Tech. 2 days have passed since Kris's fight with Earon. The original 8 are back in the normal universe. Darren and Iria have arranged a vacation for them in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Daniel and Angela, who were seriously injured, are convalescing in a nearby hospital. Kris, Earon, Anna, Brandy, Gabriel, and Tanya are currently relaxing on a private beach. Iria appears in a bathing suit. "I've kept you waiting long enough, get comfortable, you are about to learn what I know about Mark Oxford," started Iria. "We did our research on him," Anna informed. "He talks a big game," added Brandy. "He does, but he has documented success," Earon responded. "He has money, cars, expensive clothes, and various private properties," continued Gabriel. "And he's unmarried, typical rich billionaire," Tanya said sarcastically. "He might be a threat to the world here, but not the Andiron Universe's world," added Kris. "Under any other circumstance, everything that you have all said would be spot on," replied Iria. "Since you are here, let's hear what you know. We have time now," suggested Kris. "Pay attention because your research and reality are about to collide," Iria warned. The following is Iria's knowledge of God Tech and Mark Oxford. God Tech is a science and technology company based in the United Kingdom. Mark Oxford's father Vincent Oxford founded the company and owned it for over 20 years. He sold the company to his son in an unexpected move. The circumstances leading to this are never revealed because Vincent passed away 1 month after the sale. Under Mark's leadership, the company started to focus more on technology and fringe science. This is a departure from the mostly traditional science approach perfected by his father. With the rapid advancement of technology worldwide, fringe science in some cases are on the verge of reality. This leads to an increased interest in the company because they have already made a name presenting theories and making breakthroughs in the field. A flood of investors start to fund more of God Tech's projects. Within 5 years, God Tech almost instantly moved into the top 5 of Fortune 500 companies. Mark Oxford becomes known as one of the most ambitious businessmen of the century. Oxford, when in public, always wears a 3-piece suit with a matching fedora hat and Oxford shoes. He pioneered artificial intelligence and integrated it into all security systems. This makes God Tech the most well-informed company in the world. While some of God Tech's innovations have been widely embraced, others, for example, the suggestion of experimentation on live human beings, are even today called into question. Despite its profitability and status, God Tech is an extremely secretive company. The core of their business structure is mostly unknown. This ends Iria's knowledge of Mark Oxford and his company, God Tech. Chaotic Universe will now shift its focus to the United Kingdom in the normal universe. The location is the corporate headquarters of God Tech in Northern Ireland. On the top floor of the corporate tower, in a boardroom, executives and assistants await the arrival of Mark Oxford. He has called an impromptu meeting to update the status of the company's current projects. The sound of chatter fills the room. Mark Oxford walks into the room and sits at the head of the table. There is a big screen that wraps around the room. Investors from around the world appear on the screen. The boardroom is now completely silent and await to hear from Oxford. Mark Oxford, the CEO and owner of God Tech. He stands at 6 feet 2 inches tall, weighing in at 185 pounds. Oxford has brown eyes and brown hair that is neatly cut. He is wearing a 3-piece suit with a matching fedora hat and Oxford shoes, his signature attire. Oxford was born and raised in London, England. His ethnicity is British. "Update me on the current status of all of our major projects," boomed Mark Oxford. The sound of buzzing fills the air. Mechanical mosquitoes fly into a metallic box in the center of the boardroom. One of Oxford's assistants closes the box. All 8 mosquitoes have collected energy from the alternate universe. They also collected extra energy due to Daniel and Angela's presence there, the first assistant started. "What about the dome?" questioned Oxford. "The dome has been tested. It can maintain and harness the energy to simulate the alternate universe," the first assistant continued. "Magnificent, take your team and begin preparations immediately," ordered Oxford. The first assistant takes the metallic box and leaves the boardroom. Second report, shot Oxford authoritatively. We collected data as well, all of the normal universe fighters' techniques and samples of their DNA, a scientist responded. Oxford smirks. And Project Alpha? Inquired Oxford. The others are ready, Alpha needs more time, the scientist answered. Let's go to the lab and stream to our investors, the next GodTech innovation is afoot, declared Oxford. They all travel to the lab where the first assistant and his team are awaiting Oxford's arrival. Status, Oxford said as he put on a lab coat. Phase 1, melting the ice underway, Phase 2, memory analysis, Phase 3 will awaken and activate, replied the first assistant. The main screen in the lab shows the selected investors. Before we continue, you are all aware of the non-disclosure agreement and the consequences of violating it, Oxford reminded. The investors acknowledge Mr. Oxford's reminder. The first assistant reveals 5 stasis pods frozen in ice. A row of lasers melt the ice, revealing 5 humans inside of the pods. These 5 donated their bodies to science, our science, announced Oxford. Oxford steps forward. Proceed to Phase 2. Oxford ordered. The lab is filled with a golden glow. The memories of these humans inside of the pods have been wiped clean and are being analyzed to detect leftover remnants of their past experiences, continued Oxford. Phase 2 is complete, the first assistant updated. When this next phase is complete, my gods will be born, trumpeted Oxford. Phase 3 complete, the first assistant finished. 3 men and 2 identical twin females step out of the pods. They are given clothes and stand in front of Mark Oxford. Each of them are named after the first 6 Greek alphabetos, and are 100% loyal to my interests even after my death. If I go missing, their prime objective will be to locate me and bring me back to GodTech, educated Oxford. He orders the first assistant to take the newly awakened humans to the dome for the demonstration. We will demonstrate what they are capable of in the AlterDome. Please be online when I send the link, Oxford declared. The lab empties and all involved immediately go to the AlterDome. The AlterDome, possibly Mark Oxford's most ambitious project. Inside of the dome, the arena floor measures over 155,000 square feet. The outside of the AlterDome stands at 336 feet high. The height of the interior is 267 feet. It is supported by a triple shell structure and a lantern built into the center of the dome, with the lantern being the centerpiece of the dome. The outer structure is half stadium and the top half being the dome's clear structure. From the inside you can see the sky above the dome. It is not possible to see inside from the outside of the AlterDome. Oxford had this dome built in 6 years' time. It is registered as private property and not accessible to the public. Mark Oxford along with a team of scientists and executive assistants sit in the suite built high above the arena floor. Activate the AlterDome, ordered Oxford. Different colors flash throughout the dome. Stream the link for our prospective investors, Oxford added. The flashing is replaced by electricity and wind. Link is now encrypted and live, updated an executive assistant. The dome structure begins to shake. Is this normal? Oxford questioned. Yes, the energy that we gathered is new to the dome. Any foreign energy will adjust itself adversely, the first assistant updated. The shaking stops and the dome's condition stabilizes. Let's begin, have them all move in the center below the lantern, suggested Oxford. The 5 previously awakened humans step into the center of the arena floor. My AlterDome can simulate the alternate universe that I wrote about in my periodicals. The extraordinary abilities that I outlined can be used inside of this dome only, Oxford lectured the investors. The investors on screen are now intrigued. In order for us to not waste simulation energy, we will have to showcase each of them individually, except for the twins, informed the first assistant. Acknowledged, Stasis Pod Beta, please remain in the center. The rest of you please step away, ordered Oxford through the public announce system. The lantern at the top of the dome activates. A gold ray shoots down directly at the man standing in the center. The entire dome has a golden glow. The ray stops. From here on you will now be known as AlterGod Beta, show them what you can do, declared Oxford. The newly minted Beta looks up. He fires a focused shockwave blast from his hands at the dome structure. The blast creates a shockwave but does not damage the dome structure. The investors on screen clap in unison. There is a lot more to come, my friends, assured Oxford. More assistants walk in with various metal objects and place them on the arena floor. The twins enter the center of the arena floor. The lantern's ray makes contact with them. Metal objects start to float in the air. These two are a package deal, alter gods Gamma and Delta, Oxford announced. Gamma and Delta raise a hand in the air. They close their fists, and the metal objects glow and are manipulated to form two sets of armor. Gamma and Delta put on their newly formed sets of armor. Another male steps into the center of the AlterDome. The one designated Epsilon makes contact with the ray. He runs around the arena floor at a superhuman speed. The investors on screen complain that they cannot see him. Alter God Epsilon's ability is super speed, informs Oxford. Epsilon stops and stands with Beta, Gamma, and Delta. The last male entered the center of the AlterDome. The lantern's ray makes contact with him. This is Alter God Zeta, announced Oxford. Zeta starts to float in the air. Ability transfer complete, the first assistant updated. It says here, they all have more than one ability, read Oxford. The extra energy we acquired made that possible. We still have enough for Alpha and the exercise, the first assistant replied. Good job, mate, congratulated Oxford. The Alter Gods stand in the center of the AlterDome. Tell us all what your abilities are, Oxford commanded. Beta steps forward. My thought process is 10 times faster than the normal human. I also have the ability of shockwave manipulation, started Beta. Gamma and Delta step forward. We have the ability to fuse our bodies as one and double our overall fighting ability. In addition, metal manipulation with the ability to weaponize or eliminate metal objects. Gamma and Delta followed. Epsilon steps forward. Super speed and enhanced strength, continued Epsilon. Zeta steps forward. Flight, enhanced strength, and tactical analysis. Zeta finished. One of the investors requests to speak. Request granted, responded Oxford. How do we know if this is even real? Human flight is impossible, the investor debated. Any of you that are still unsure are welcome to come here and witness the Alter Gods in person, replied Oxford. All of the investors on screen express interest. With your help, these abilities can be used outside of the dome eventually. Once we can fund individual external power sources, the God Project can roll out worldwide. I will reach out to you about the when, Oxford said as he stood up. The stream's link is terminated. How much longer until Alpha is awakened? He is the centerpiece of this project, inquired Oxford. Alpha's memories are extensive and require at the least another 5 days to purge. If he is awakened before then, he could be unstable and his loyalty will be in question, the first assistant replied. Oxford stroked his own chin. That would be a problem. Any human as powerful as any of them cannot wander this world without loyalty to me, said Oxford as he looked down to the arena floor. The 5 of them will be no problem. There are no anomalies present in their mental programming, the first assistant assured. Gather another team, I want them monitored 24/7, ordered Oxford. Already done, we have a team in the underground monitoring their status as we speak, the first assistant informed. Outstanding, I'll leave it to you. I have an appointment shortly, said Oxford as he exited the suite. Oxford boards a helicopter. He flies to the North Pole, the site of a universal travel point. Shigo greets Oxford and the two shake hands. Myself and the masters have fulfilled our end of the deal, Shigo declared. I agree, the data and energy that my team collected suits GodTech's needs, added Oxford. Our research involving combination elements have been delivered to alternate GodTech. Expect communications with your alternate soon, Shigo informed. By the way, I was not amused that you alerted Kris of my presence in this universe, boomed Oxford. Don't forget that I know who you really are. That would affect the normal universe's fighters' use of force against you if it comes down to it, Shigo shot back. I am Mark Oxford, son of Vincent Oxford. There is no reason for a dispute, responded Oxford calmly. As long as you keep the normal universe's fighters busy, we will have more than enough time to put our common goals in motion, Shigo said as he looked at Oxford. Oxford hands Shigo the plans for harnessing universal energy in the form of a thumb drive. With that, our desire to make the normal and alternate universes function as one will be possible sooner rather than later, Oxford says as he takes a step back. Do you have the information that I requested? Asked Shigo. The person that you are looking for has been located, Oxford answered. Is he in this universe? Questioned Shigo. Oxford shakes his head. He is in your universe, my alternate has eyes on him, you will be informed, assures Oxford. In exchange for this information, Earon has agreed that once the plan is initiated, the elemental masters will not interfere with your plans in the normal universe, Shigo revealed. That is music to my ears. I hope to continue our working agreement, responded Oxford. We will if these combination element prototypes are of any use to us, Shigo remarked. You suffered losses in your camp, yes? Questioned Oxford. We did, but it was due to their own overconfidence. They underestimated Kris and his classmates. Don't do the same, Shigo warned. I won't. Tell you what, I have 3 more bodies not used for the God Project. I will give them as a gift to Earon. I will make it so you can train them with ease, offered Oxford. Lord Earon will appreciate that, responded Shigo. What's next? Oxford questioned. I have business here in the normal universe, another recruiting trip, answered Shigo. Good luck with that, I have pressing matters to attend to. Have a good one, Oxford replied as he boarded the helicopter. Oxford's helicopter flies away. Back in Brazil. In the normal universe. 6 days have now passed since Kris's fight with Earon. Kris, Anna, Duran, Brandy, Tanya, and Gabriel are here. They are joined by Daniel and Angela, who were just released from the hospital. The original 8 are having dinner together in a private villa. Before we eat, I have something to say. Despite our past, I would like to thank you for stepping in when Earon attacked us, Daniel said as he looked at Kris. Kris nodded. No problem, but I had to intervene. His fight was with me. I wasn't going to let that continue, replied Kris. I'm curious about what you guys have been up to since leaving Earon's island, Angela inquired. Tanya looked at Angela. Our injuries were mostly minor and immediately treatable, started Tanya before she drank from her cup. We have been relaxing, and you two would have been able to as well, if you didn't enter the fighting ring, Gabriel continued. What the hell were you guys thinking doing that? Questioned Brandy. Earon took your intrusion as disrespect, Anna added. The fighting ring in that arena is sacred to them and they were willing to die in it, and a couple of them did, Duran said as he looked at Daniel. We didn't think that he would actually fight us, responded Daniel. I thought he would just have us fight one of his minions or something, Angela added in agreement. Next time you two will have to be ready for that. We can't have another incident like that, Gabriel declared. We can't continue to have you both involved in this if you cannot properly defend yourselves. I'm going to train you during our stay here, said Tanya as she looked at Daniel and Angela. The others agree. They talk more about God Tech. Wait, what does God Tech have to do with the universal struggle? A puzzled Daniel asks. They are just a tech company. I saw their CEO on TV when the security AI was introduced, Angela recalled. We are still researching him, informed Brandy. Look what I just found, Tanya said as she pointed at her laptop. The rest of the original 8 surround Tanya. Oxford has written and published books about an alternate universe, revealed Tanya. Kris looks closer. This is crazy. He described the Andiron universe so accurately, even down to it being a global society, Kris added. How could he know all of this, wondered Tanya. I think that I may have found a reason why Oxford could be a threat. There are accusations online that God Tech has been experimenting on humans, Duran informed. He also participated in interviews regarding his belief that another universe exists, and a documentary about it coming soon, added Tanya. He seems dead set on proving that the Andiron universe is real. Too bad it actually is, Anna said as she finished her meal. The real question is, does Mark Oxford know about us? Wondered Brandy. The elemental masters knew about us, so that's a fair question, Duran responded. God Tech's AI security is in our school, it's in restaurants, businesses, and amusement parks. We should assume that he could know something about us, lectured Tanya. I'm debating if we should just go to the UK and find out for ourselves, Gabriel suggested. Kris nodded. I don't disagree, but we should not blindly run into the fire, replied Kris. We need to train, because we have no idea what we will run into this time, Tanya said in a serious tone. The others agree. If I am going to train, it will be on my own. Earon disrespected me when he did not select me to fight in the main event, boomed Gabriel. Maybe Earon was cautious seeing what you were capable of in person, Angela suggested. It doesn't matter, my goal remains the same, I will be the greatest fighter in the universes, responded Gabriel. Gabriel walks to leave the dining room. As Gabriel leaves, Tanya stops him in the hallway. You can't electrocute me this time, you are going to hear what I have to say before you leave, Tanya demanded. Gabriel stops. Well? Questioned Gabriel. Thank you for standing by me while we were in the Andiron universe, Tanya replied. That's it? Shot Gabriel. No, whatever you do, don't forget that we are your friends and we will always root for you no matter what you do, Tanya said sincerely. I appreciate that, but I have a feeling that this universal struggle thing is going to escalate eventually. There is too much unknown to walk into these fights half-heartedly. Train Daniel and Angela well, I will be watching and I might show up when you least expect it, declared Gabriel. I understand, never forget who you are, Tanya said as she stepped away. Gabriel hugs Tanya. You can handle this, you have been one step ahead since this all started, you don't need me, said Gabriel as he walked away. Gabriel packs his belongings and walks out of the villa. Darren and Iria appear in front of Gabriel. Did you two come here to stop me from leaving? Gabriel asked. No, answered Darren. We cannot directly interfere in your affairs, remember? Iria added. I want to undergo rigorous training, to sharpen my abilities, Gabriel announced. You are not a primary defender of the Andiron universe, so I don't see any issue with that, said Darren as he made eye contact with Gabriel. You are not required to deal with God Tech, you will have as much time as you need to satisfy your desires, Iria continued. I request that you transport me to the Pyrenees Mountains for my training. The mountains are in Spain, my family immigrated from there and I prefer to train there, suggested Gabriel. Darren and Iria agree with Gabriel's request and immediately transport him there. Gabriel disappears. Tanya walks back into the villa, back inside the villa. What is his problem? Daniel asked as he banged his fist on the table. He feels the same way that you and Angela did not being selected to fight, responded Anna. I wanted to fight in the main event too, Duran said sarcastically. Brandy flashed Duran a dirty look. This isn't the time to be joking around, Brandy said in a serious tone. Gabriel dominated his fight, I barely got through the tag team fight, and Shigo didn't even fight me. I was surprised that Earon chose to fight me, recalled Kris. The fact remains, you beat Earon fair and square, but I wonder why Shigo didn't fight you, Tanya replied. He was the one who told me about Mark Oxford, revealed Kris. Looks of surprise came upon Duran, Anna, Brandy, Tanya, Angela, and Daniel's faces. How could Shigo even know about Oxford? Angela put forward. His alternate, speculated Brandy. Iria did say his alternate was previously at rock bottom, but their lives are the same now, Duran added. That must mean that God Tech exists in the Andiron universe, Kris said as he stood up. And considering that the Andiron universe is a global society, alternate God Tech may be even more informed than this universe's version, hypothesized Tanya. I think that we should go after Gabriel, and bring him back, Daniel suggested. Tanya disagrees. Gabriel is choosing his own path, we need to focus on our training, not his, responded Tanya. Kris and the rest of Team X agree. As a unit they conclude that physical training will begin tomorrow and go to their rooms and retire for the night. The story once again shifts back to the United Kingdom at God Tech's headquarters. Mark Oxford is meeting with his first assistant. Shane, thank you for meeting with me so late, said Mark Oxford, before sipping some tea. Shane nodded and took a sip of his tea. In 3 days, my team will activate Alpha, Shane informed. Marvelous, we are on track. Business is about to pick up, my friend, replied a very pleased Mark Oxford. We have also received word that the normal universe's fighters are preparing to train their physical technique, Shane continued. Are they still in Brazil? Inquired Oxford. Yes, but one of them has left. I have a monitoring team working on locating him as we speak, Shane answered. I want my gods to begin training immediately, ordered Oxford. Right now? I don't think that will be possible, they are still human. They require care and sustenance like another human would, they eat, sleep, and entertain themselves just like us, Shane reminded Oxford. Very well, they can begin training tomorrow morning after breakfast. What is the current status of their mental programming? Questioned Oxford. They are loyal to you, but will only take orders from me and/or you. The normal universe fighters' data is being transferred to them as they sleep, Shane answered. I want to be present for their training. Everything has to work out perfectly in order to get these investors to buy in. We cannot afford any setbacks in this process, boomed Oxford. I will clear your obligations for the AM hours tomorrow. Trust me, you will not be disappointed, Shane guaranteed. For you and your team's sake, I better not be, Oxford said as he stood up. Mark Oxford leaves the meeting room. The next morning in the AlterDome, Mark Oxford has a dining table in his suite. Shane walks in followed by Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, and Zeta. Oxford has a full English breakfast setup: bacon, pork sausages, fried and scrambled eggs, baked beans in tomato sauce, black pudding, and toast. They all sit down and begin eating at the table. For some reason, I cannot use my abilities outside of the dome, Mr. Oxford. Is there a reason for that? Inquired Beta. This dome is the source of your abilities, Oxford started. Outside of this dome, you are just normal humans, continued Shane. What is our purpose if we only possess these godlike abilities in only one place? Beta inquired. Your only purpose is to serve me and the aspirations of God Tech, inside or outside of this dome, Oxford answered in a serious tone. Shane starts briefing them about each of the 8 normal universes fighters. I will briefly inform you before the start of your mandatory training, Shane started. The 5 alter gods turn their attention to Shane. The big screen in Oxford's suite shows a picture of Tanya. This is Tanya. She has the ability to use metal energy to aid her in combat. She is one of the top-rated fighters according to our data. She has others that will help and support her, but she has the tendency to either go overboard or disrupt in order to prove herself, Shane informed. Metal, that's our ability, replied Gamma and Delta. Her abilities are different, and energy-based. If she cannot reclaim metal objects that she creates, that energy will be lost to her, revealed Oxford. The picture on screen changes to Gabriel. Gabriel has the ability to control electricity. He is currently rated as the top fighter that the normal universe has and is not to be taken lightly. While he is an impressive fighter, his loyalty to defend the universe is ambiguous. Based on our current intelligence, the chances are high that we will not encounter Gabriel here, Shane continued. Why is that? Questioned Zeta. Gabriel has left the normal universe's camp of fighters to train on his own. He may not return to them in time, Oxford answered. His data will be transferred to you regardless, in case he does show up, added Shane. A picture of Daniel and Angela appear on screen. Unfortunately, we have the least amount of data about these two. They are rated the lowest of our possible 8 foes. These two are not team players and not well trained in their respective abilities of water and wood, Shane went over quickly. A picture of Kris appears on the big screen. Kris Wilson, he has the ability to control and use the unseen, commonly known as darkness. He too is one of the top-rated normal universe fighters. He was recently baited to challenge an unknown enemy. The thing is, he has a silent cockiness about him and used that to defeat the one known as Earon in the alternate universe. We are still studying his abilities in order to better challenge him upon his arrival, Shane lectured. He is the biggest threat to God Tech. His adaptability and desire to protect his friends will make him difficult to defeat. Do not underestimate him, boomed Oxford. Next, a picture of Earon appears on the big screen. Earon, he has the ability to control rocks and increase his strength through the energy of Earth's non-human living things. He is also loyal and supportive of his friends. His resourcefulness and honor code definitely threatens God Tech just as much as his best friend Kris, Shane informed. A picture of Anna appears on the big screen. Anna is the love interest of Kris. She has the ability to control wind and she is a more than capable fighter. Her spiritual awareness makes her very dangerous as well, making her another fighter that I advise you to not take lightly, continued Shane. Brandy's image is now on the big screen. Brandy is a friend of Kris's, and he has a recent history with her. Her ability allows her to control and/or manipulate fire. Even though she was victorious in the alternate universe, her abilities are not on par with Tanya, Gabriel, Kris, Earon, and Anna's, lectured Shane. Mark Oxford stood up. These fighters are your targets. Their existence threatens yours. Once they are encountered, you are to eliminate them when given the order, Oxford boomed. All of this information and more will be available to you via your mental programming in the next 48 hours, revealed Shane. Oxford, Shane, and the altar gods finish their breakfast and head to the arena floor of the AlterDome. In order to defeat the fighters I showed you, you must train your abilities for use in combat, Oxford announced. Each one of you will go through a personalized training session starting now, said Shane as he stood next to Oxford. Starting with the first to question their purpose, Beta, step into the center of the arena floor, Oxford commanded. The simulation program is capable of creating humanoid targets and combat units with limited abilities. The program is also capable of providing graphical instruction for the user of the simulation. Due to the perceived realism of the program, physical and mental harm can affect the user. The harmful effects of the simulation program are temporary and will cease after shutdown of the individual user's training simulation. Beta awaits instruction. A simulation starts with humanoid targets painted in different colors. The shockwave blasts that you fire can be manipulated. I have arranged for the targets to emit a beacon. That is your signal to destroy the targets. Hit the targets without hitting those that do not emit the beacon, informed Shane. Commence simulation, Oxford commanded. A beacon emits. Beta's hands glow. He releases a shockwave, destroying his first target. The shockwave reflects and quickly flies toward Beta. Beta is caught off guard and is knocked back a couple of feet from the force of the blast. Each target that you destroy will reflect your shockwave. I made sure that this was not just target practice, updated Shane. Destroy the targets, avoid the ones that do not emit the beacon, and avoid the shockwave reflections. Sounds like a challenge to me, Oxford added. Not quite. I am about to make one final modification. If you hit the wrong targets, the force of the reflecting shock waves will be double, revealed Shane. Beta continues the simulation program. Testing his timing as well as his reflexes is genius, even for you, Shane, Oxford said as he watched the simulation video of Beta. His advanced thought processes are still developing. In the coming days we can rerun this simulation. His results should improve significantly, replied Shane. Of the 10 targets that Beta was supposed to hit, he only hit 4. He was able to avoid most of the reflective shock waves. A few struck his body, knocking off his rhythm. Beta is inside of the simulation on one knee and breathing heavily. Cease simulation, Oxford shouted. Beta stands up and is seemingly fine, despite being hit by multiple shock blasts. In some cases your blasts can be reflected if it strikes certain things. You will have to be ready for that, instructed Shane. If you can control it, the reflections can be absorbed as excess energy according to our collected data, Oxford added. All data that we collect from your simulations will be added to your mental programming and will be available to you in the coming days, informed Shane. Gamma and Delta, your simulation is next. Step into the center of the arena floor, Oxford commanded. Gamma and Delta enters the arena floor. Even though you two are in separate bodies, your mental programming will compel you to act as one, started Oxford. You can save the body fusion technique for combat. The two of you need to learn how to weaponize metal objects efficiently, and train more in the area of physical technique in order to defend yourselves, continued Shane. You two are of Greek heritage. You will learn pancration to provide a physical presence in combat, Oxford finished. Commence simulation, shouted Shane. The simulation begins. 2 simulated opponents appear as a wrestling ring rises where Gamma and Delta stand. The simulation will show you a technique and you must attempt to perform it, Oxford updated. This program will run until all of the assigned techniques are successfully performed, added Shane. The simulation program first teaches them the proper fighting stance. A simulated opponent is generated demonstrating the fighting stance. The simulations face Gamma and Delta with a nearly frontal stance, while only slightly turned sideways. This stance is for hybrid fighting, for the wrestler's front position and the boxer's sideways stance, and is consistent and able to preserve both the option of using striking and protecting the center line of the body, and the option of applying grappling techniques, started Shane. Delta and Gamma get into the stance that the simulated opponents stand in. The left side of your body is slightly forward of the right side of your body, and your left hand should be more forward than the right on. Both hands should be held high so that the tips of the fingers are at the level of the hairline or just below the top of the head, Oxford added. Gamma and Delta continue to perfect the stance. The program has determined that Gamma and Delta have mastered the fighting stance. In the interest of time, I have programmed the simulation to teach you one striking technique and one grappling technique. Updated Shane. Another simulated opponent appears. After receiving a graphical demonstration, both Gamma and Delta perform a straight kick with the bottom of the foot to the stomach of the simulants. Perfect, effective striking is essential. It will allow you to use your wrestling to control a fight. Oxford advised. Next we will have you perform a wrestling technique. The simulants will now be in physical mode. Informed Shane. The simulants are now formed with physical bodies. The program will now teach you the pancration version of the arm-bar shoulder lock combination. In order to execute this technique, please step behind the simulants. Oxford commanded. Gamma and Delta step behind the simulated opponents. After receiving graphical instructions, both start the process to perform the technique. They first trap the left arm of the simulants and start pulling back on the right arm. They bend the trapped left arm, with the fingers and palm trapped inside the armpits of Gamma and Delta. To trap the left arm, Delta and Gamma push their own left arm underneath the left elbow of the opponents. Delta and Gamma's left hand ends up pressing down on the scapula region of their opponent's back. This position prevents the opponent from pulling out his hand from the wrestler's armpit and puts pressure on the left shoulder. The right arm Delta and Gamma pulls back at the opponent's right wrist. Doing this, they keep the right arm of their opponent straightened and tightly pulled against their right hip and lower abdomen area, which results in an arm bar putting pressure on the right elbow. The two are now in full contact on top of the opponent, with their right leg in front of the right leg of the opponents to block them from escaping by rolling forward. Well done, complimented Oxford. A fine show of technique, but I did not program the simulants to react to your grappling. Next time I will. Shane added. More techniques will be added into your mental programming. We will continue to train those techniques in the simulator soon. Updated Oxford. See simulation. Shane shouted. Gamma and Delta step out of the simulation chamber. Epsilon, you are next. Oxford informed. Epsilon steps into the simulation chamber. You need to learn how to increase your speed without stressing your body out. Started Shane. Your mental programming will teach you how to use the enhanced strength, so formal training for that is not required. Oxford continued. Commence simulation, commanded Shane. The graphical interface shows Epsilon 5 techniques to increase his speed without causing strain to his body. Epsilon first maintains an upright posture, keeping his back straight, shoulders relaxed, and chest slightly forward. The simulation program warns him to avoid slouching or leaning too far back. Nice form, Shane complimented. Epsilon then puts his head in a neutral position, looking straight ahead. He is alerted to avoid tilting his head, because it can strain his neck and upper back muscles. Epsilon now focuses on his arms and hands, bending his arms at a 90-degree angle, while keeping his elbows close to his body. The simulation prompts Epsilon to swing his arms naturally, front to back, not across his body. To propel himself forward, Epsilon relaxes his hands, and forms a gentle, loose fist. He is again advised by the program to avoid clenching his fists, because it can cause tension in his arms and shoulders. Epsilon is prompted by the simulation to aim for a comfortable and natural stride length. Overstriding or taking too long a step can result in injuries. Your feet should land under your hips. Started Shane. Focus on your cadence. It is the number of steps you take per minute. You need to double the output of 170 steps per minute. That will prove that your speed is superior and unmatched. Oxford continued. Shorter and quicker steps will reduce the impact on your joints and maximize your speed. We will time you as you run a couple of laps around the simulation, informed Shane. The training simulation changes to a track and field setting. Epsilon runs 5-mile laps in less than 4 minutes using the techniques that he was taught by the simulation program. You are doing great, but believe it or not, there are techniques including foot strike, hips and core, breathing, and relaxation and mental focus, lectured Shane. These techniques will allow you to move even faster, and will be added into your mental programming, Oxford added. See simulation, ordered Shane. I'm impressed, Oxford complimented. We timed and recorded your training session and will embed it in your mental programming so it can be adapted into your mechanics, Shane finished. Epsilon zipped out of the simulation chamber. Let's move on to our final training simulation and end this round of training for today, suggested Oxford. Zeta steps into the simulation chamber. So far, we have only seen you float in the AlterDome, Shane pointed out. The following training simulation will teach you how to fly in all directions, in order to increase your mobility and elusiveness, notified Oxford. Commence simulation, Shane commanded. The display within the simulation briefs AlterGod Zeta on aerodynamics. Aerodynamics studies the movement of air and how it interacts with solid objects. It also observes airflow patterns, pressure distribution, and the behavior of air that moves around the body. 4 essential forces are required to achieve and maintain flight. These 4 forces are as follows: lift, weight, thrust, and drag. Lift is an upwards force that builds as air passes over the body. Zeta's body has been modified to counter the downward force of his weight. Lift is required to get higher into the air, which is not the same as floating. Thrust is a forward force created by Zeta's mental programming, in order to propel forward in the air while opposing the force of drag, which is created by air resistance. Zeta must be able to measure these forces so that lift equals weight, and thrust equals drag. This is required for steady flight. The training simulation shows a demonstration of these actions and calculations. Activate your lift by positioning yourself in a jumping motion, prompted Shane. Zeta positions himself in the jumping motion. Your body is modified to counter gravity once you enter the air. Use your mental programming to release your body's weight to get into the air, Shane continued. Zeta's body emits a gold glow. As the glow slowly fades away, Zeta slowly glides upward into the air. Great, now you must learn how to maneuver in the air. The thrust technique will now be shown, updated Oxford. The training simulation shows Zeta how to perform the thrust technique. Using this technique, fly through the digital hoops as they appear in different parts of the chamber, Shane updated. Zeta's body once again glows gold. After throwing his hands forward, Zeta flies forward in the air in a short burst. As the digital hoops appear in the air, Zeta uses the thrust technique to fly through each digital hoop. While your flight programming is mostly automated, you must still execute some of the aerodynamics with your mind and body, started Oxford. We do not have the time today to train you for continuous flight in all directions. Your mental programming will be updated to do so soon, Oxford continued. Zeta slowly descends back to the ground of the simulation chamber. Cease simulation, Shane ordered. Great morning of training, you are all free to do as you please until we call for you again. When in public, keep a low profile, commanded Oxford. The story will now catch up with Shigo, who is currently meeting with Q, Dan, and Euro. In the normal universe, the location is atop Meteora, a large rock formation located in Thessaly, Greece. Any updates on the whereabouts of Switchfire? Inquired Shigo. She has been most recently traced to the South American continent, Dan informed. In this universe? Responded Shigo. Yes, that's why we are here, Dan added. Q looked at Shigo. I wonder if she could be defecting to the normal universe's side, remarked Q. Shigo shook his head. What she does in the normal universe will not have much effect on the universal struggle. There will be no cause for concern, Shigo said confidently. Euro sits on a nearby rock formation. I too have business in this universe, it's a matter of my honor, updated Euro. Shigo, Q, and Dan nodded. I intend to bring in a new recruit into the Elemental Masters. I am going to visit this person shortly, announced Shigo. The 4 acknowledge each other's statements, and agree to go their separate ways. The next day. In the normal universe, the location is São Conrado, a waterside getaway in a small and peaceful neighborhood within Rio de Janeiro. The original 8-Gabriel are preparing to start their physical training. Darren and Iria appear. We have no problem with the 3 of you training today, but do not forget that you are not the primary defenders of the universes, started Iria. This means that you 3 are not required to investigate God Tech, and free to pursue your own interests as Gabriel did, Darren finished. We understand, replied Angela. I want to prove myself and wish to train more, Daniel added. I want to challenge myself and help Daniel and Angela learn how to defend themselves in a real fight, informed Tanya. Angela, Daniel, and Tanya look at each other. The trio nods in agreement. When Team X goes to investigate God Tech, we will too, Tanya declared. As you wish, replied Darren. Pay attention to your training, never forget that your life is on the line no matter what universe you are in, Iria lectured. Darren and Iria disappear. Okay, you two, let's get started, suggested Tanya. Daniel and Angela stand in front of Tanya. Brandy and Duran have volunteered to help me train you today. I also got some training equipment from a couple of the locals who train in mixed martial arts, Tanya updated. She opens a large duffel bag. The bag contains gloves, headgear, soft shoes for kicking, and a roll-out training pad that Tanya places near the waterway. We will go over 4 physical techniques that you can use to defend yourself in a fight. I will first describe the technique, demonstrate it, then allow you to perform it on your own, following my demonstrations, prompted Tanya. Daniel and Angela nodded. Kris and Anna agree that the two of them should take a walk while the others train. Anna takes Kris's hand and the duo walks toward the coast of the beach. Now that Daniel, Angela, Duran and Brandy have their training gear on, Tanya stands in front of them ready to begin. The first technique that I will teach you is the push kick. Use it to keep aggressive opponents off of you. A push kick can also measure the distance between you and your opponent. This technique is comparable to a jab. Push kicks work nicely as a way to reduce your opponent's offense. You can throw one down the line anytime an opponent throws a kick or rushes at you to knock them off balance. Use your lead leg to cover more distance, Tanya lectured. Brandy steps in front of Tanya and gets into her fighting stance. Tanya gets into her fighting stance. She raises her foot off the ground until it is close to the same level as her hips. This body motion is known as chambering, elaborated Tanya. She pushes her foot forward and generates momentum from her hip. Tanya connects with the ball of her foot at full extension. The kick makes contact with Brandy's left arm, making her take a couple of steps back. Bring your leg back into your fighting stance by reversing the movement. Pull your foot back toward your hip before bringing it back down, Tanya finished. Daniel and Angela nodded. The next technique is the mount escape. The worst position that you can be in is the mount bottom position. Your opponent can unleash powerful punches and elbows on you, because your defensive options are limited, started Tanya. You never want to allow an opponent to mount you during the fight, but you might find yourself in the bottom position if a fight goes to the ground, continued Brandy. 2 ways to escape mount bottom are shrimping to regain half guard or full guard positions. Half guard is a guard that uses control of a single leg of your opponent using both of your legs. This can be achieved when they are halfway past your guard. Full guard is essentially an upside-down mount position for the person on the bottom. In full guard, the individual in the bottom position wraps his or her legs around the person in the mount top position, Duran finished. I will now demonstrate the technique, announced Tanya. She lays on her back along the training mat. She allows Brandy to mount her. Tanya is now in the mounted bottom position. Control the arm in the direction you plan to take your opponent, so they cannot use that arm to post on you. This detail is essential to pull off this technique, Tanya added. Brandy enters Tanya's guard. Tanya moves her feet close to her behind, while keeping her feet flat on the floor. She bridges her hips off the mat as high as she can and rolls to end up in the top position. Tanya is now in the mount top position over Brandy. Tanya helps Brandy to her feet. Now it's your turn. You two have 15 minutes to work on these techniques, before we move on to the next ones, declared Tanya. Meanwhile, Kris and Anna are walking along the coast of the beach together. So you have avoided talking about it long enough. What happened between you and Shigo? Anna questioned. Kris stopped walking and looked at Anna. He modified the barrier. Apparently Earon was the only person outside of the fighting ring that could hear or see what was going on, started Kris. Sounds like only those that can use darkness elemental energy was able to make out anything, Anna remarked. He told me that he knew my biological father, continued Kris. What does that have to do with the universal struggle? Anna asked. My father and Shigo are the former defenders of the universes, answered Kris. Now that you mention it, Darren and Earon never told us who the previous defenders were, or what happened to them, Anna added. Shigo wouldn't tell me if he was alive or not, but I could tell that he was not lying about anything he told me, said Kris confidently. Earon is their leader, but it seems there is a lot more to Shigo than we originally thought, Anna replied. Shigo not only surprised me with physical techniques that I know, but elemental ones too, all taught to him by my father, added Kris. So he did fight you? Anna speculated. He did, but very briefly. I don't think a real fight was his intent, responded Kris. You said that your father disappeared a decade ago. If he was a primary defender of the universes and he was able to use elemental abilities, he must have traveled to the Andiron universe at some point, Anna surmised. Kris nodded. That thought has already crossed my mind, agreed Kris. Your father is the reason why Darren and Iria chose you. The rest of us were never meant to be involved. I have a theory, it's not a perfect one, but it makes sense given your encounter with Shigo, Anna said as she looked at Kris. Kris awaited Anna's theory. Tim knows something. Shigo and Earon are looking for him. I think they were trying to use you to draw him out. That's why Earon wanted to fight you in the main event, presumed Anna. Darren and Iria may be looking for him too. They must have figured the same thing that the Masters did. Those two know more than they are letting on, Kris added. They can't directly interfere. Your father doesn't want to be found, and I doubt Darren and Iria will spill the beans. You are going to have to find him yourself, recommended Anna. The real question here is why Shigo switched sides, Kris wondered. I fear that only he and your father will be able to answer that question, replied Anna. Kris holds both of Anna's hands. We must keep this between us for now, and hope that I find my father before Earon and Shigo do, Kris declared. I will keep what you told me to myself, I promise, assured Anna. Anna kisses Kris on the cheek. Let's go back and see what progress the others have made in their training, Kris suggested. Kris and Anna start heading back towards Tanya and the others. Tanya is evaluating Daniel and Angela's performance on the first two self-defense techniques. Not bad, you two, complimented Tanya. Daniel, Angela, Brandy, and Duran sit down to rest. You performed the techniques well enough that I'm confident you can use them in a fight. Daniel, the push kick is not necessarily an offensive maneuver. Hurting your opponent is unlikely. Try using a little less force to preserve physical energy for the fight, Tanya advised. Daniel nodded. Angela, your mount escape is fine, but you need to control the opponent's leg. If you do not, your opponent will easily stop you from reversing the position. The mount escape requires physical energy, don't waste it having to use the technique multiple times, continued Tanya. Tanya opens another duffel bag. It contains body pads for them to wear during the next training technique. The next technique that I will teach you are knees and elbows in the clinch position, Tanya declared. Duran stood up. The clinch is a close-range fighting position achieved by maintaining dominant head control. It requires a great deal of movement and techniques from the inside and can be quite flexible when used properly, briefed Duran. Brandy now stands in front of Tanya. Myself and Brandy will demonstrate the clinch position, Tanya added. With Brandy in close range, Tanya reaches both hands around Brandy's head. Tanya tightens her hands down, which takes away all space between her forearms and Brandy's head. Do not interlace your fingers, instead stack hand over hand, informed Tanya as she maintains the clinch position. Tanya brings her elbows closer together, making the clinch tighter and more difficult for Brandy to break free. She draws Brandy's head towards her chest, locking off all of the space and effectively breaking Brandy's posture. From this position, you are now free to open up with knees and elbows to the body, started Tanya. Tanya uses her position to score an inside elbow to Brandy's upper body area. You can also utilize knees, but do not fire them straight down the middle, you could possibly lose your balance. Stick to knees inside, aimed for the body, finished Tanya. Kris and Anna walk up to where the others are training. Welcome back, Duran greeted. Looks like everything is going well, replied Kris. It is. I'm about to demonstrate the last technique, Tanya announced. You two don't mind filling in for us, do you? Asked Brandy. Not at all, Kris and Anna answered. Kris and Anna put on training gear and stood next to Tanya. The leg kick is another technique that works well in self-defense scenarios. Throwing it with your lead leg is called an inside leg kick. It is a risk-free technique used to target the outer part of the thigh or the calf muscle, started Tanya. Anna steps in front of Tanya. Anna gets into her fighting stance. Tanya gets into her fighting stance as well. She pivots her non-kicking foot and drives her hips toward Anna in order to generate more power. Tanya makes contact with the hardest part of her shin to Anna's calf. Do not whip your leg at your opponent, drive it as if you are going to split your opposition's leg in half. A couple of accurate leg kicks are all it takes to significantly compromise an attacker's movement and break their will to fight, added Anna. Daniel, I am going to have you perform the inside leg kick on Kris and end this training session, Tanya finished. Daniel steps in front of Kris. Kris gets into his fighting stance. Daniel gets into his fighting stance. Daniel pivots his non-kicking foot and drives his hips toward Kris in order to generate more power. Daniel makes contact with the hardest part of his shin, to Kris's calf. Kris takes a step back. That was good, you disrupted my fighting stance, Kris complimented. Tanya smiles. I have seen enough from you two today. If you can master those techniques, you should be competitive in any fight that you are involved in, said Tanya encouragingly. The sound of clapping comes from nearby. A young Spaniard woman is sipping a drink from her cup. She takes off her sunglasses as she stands face to face with Brandy. Switch fire, shouted a shocked Brandy. Brandy gets into her fighting stance. Don't you want to know why I'm here before you fight me? Switch fire asked calmly. Not really, answered a serious Brandy. Anna steps in between Brandy and Switch fire. I say we let her tell us why she's here, Anna suggested. Tanya stepped forward. Since you had the decency to show yourself in our universe this time, I agree, let's hear what Switchfire has to say, added Tanya. Kris, Anna, Duran, Tanya, Daniel and Angela step back, allowing Brandy and Switchfire to stand face to face. I am no longer a member of the Elemental Masters, but not because you defeated me. I chose to leave on my own, Switchfire started. I applaud the invited six for your skill shown in the Andiron universe, continues Switchfire. She looks at Kris and smiles. Since you are still alive, that means you must have defeated Earon, Switchfire remarks. Should go through in the towel for him, replied Kris. Interesting, those two had been focused on you for years now. For some reason they want you alive right now, Switchfire said as she turned her attention back to Brandy. I left because your fighting spirit led me to believe that you will not allow anyone to compromise the safety of the universes. Since you defeated me, I must now acknowledge you as a fire master, announced Switchfire. Why? Our fight was purely circumstantial, Brandy inquired. It is an age-old tradition in my universe. I will honor this by way of the two of us training together without malicious intent. Come and train with me in the Drazzle universe, offered Switchfire. I don't know about this, can you really trust her? Anna questioned. I don't like it either, but in the end the choice is hers, added Tanya. Kris and Duran agreed. Switchfire extends her hand for Brandy to take. Brandy hugs Anna, Kris, and Duran. Brandy takes Switchfire's hand. Brandy leaves with Switchfire as the rest of what is left of the original 8 look on. Days after Kris's fight with Earon in the Andiron universe. The original 8 are back in the normal universe on vacation in Brazil. Iria briefly joins them and tells them what she knows about Mark Oxford. While this is going on, the story moves to the United Kingdom in Northern Ireland. Here we are taken inside of the headquarters of God Tech, where Mark Oxford is introduced. He is holding a meeting so he can be updated on his company's important projects. It is revealed that the mosquitoes that bit the original 8 in Chapter 11 collected energy and data from the Andiron universe, the original 8's fighting techniques, physical and elemental, as well as samples of their DNA. Oxford is informed that the Gods project is ready to be finalized. Oxford and a team of scientists awaken 5 cryogenically frozen humans. They are referred to as the AlterGods by Oxford himself. The AlterDome is introduced. Within this massive structure, God Tech is able to use the energy collected from the Andiron universe to simulate its nature and being. The lantern in the center grants the 5 humans now designated as Beta, Delta, Gamma, Epsilon, and Zeta superhuman abilities. They demonstrate these abilities for Oxford as well as a group of investors looking to purchase the technology that makes these things possible. After Tanya decides to train Daniel and Angela, Gabriel leaves the original 8, opting to train on his own. Darren and Iria transport him to the Pyrenees Mountains. When we rejoin God Tech, Mark Oxford and his first assistant Shane use a training simulator inside of the AlterDome to develop the abilities of the AlterGods. Their abilities are governed by mental programming, which uses mind and body motions to activate them. Unlike the elemental masters of the Andiron universe, the altar gods do not possess elemental-based abilities. Shigo is joined in the normal universe by Q, Dan, and Earon. Q and Dan have traced Switchfire to the South American continent in the normal universe. Shigo informs them that he is going to visit a potential future member of the Elemental Masters. When we rejoin the original 8, they are preparing to train in Sa Conrado. Darren and Iria appear once again, informing Tanya, Daniel, and Angela that they are not required to investigate God Tech. The three unanimously agree to accompany Team X when they go to Northern Ireland. They proceed with their physical training that focuses on self-defense techniques. Brandy and Earon assist Tanya with demonstrating and describing techniques. Kris and Anna decide to take a walk along the beach. Anna requests to know more about what happened between Kris and Shigo in the previous chapter. Kris reveals to her that his father and Shigo were the defenders of the universes before them. This confirms that at some point Tim Wilson did make contact with Darren and Iria. Kris and Anna both agree that they should find Tim before Earon and Shigo do. Kris and Anna return to the others and assist Tanya with completing Daniel and Angela's self-defense training. After this they are interrupted by the shocking appearance of Switchfire. She tells them that she is no longer an elemental master. Her intention is to honor her universe's tradition by training with an opponent who defeated her in a fight without hostility. She requests that Brandy come with her to the Drazel universe. Brandy accepts, ending the chapter. Mark Oxford is introduced as well as the ambitious God Project. When will we see Stasis Pod Alpha awakened? And why did it take more time to purge his memories than the others? Some of the elemental masters have appeared in the normal universe, including Shigo, who intends to bring a new recruit to the elemental masters. Who does he have in mind? And when will he encounter this person? What business does Earon have in the normal universe? Brandy leaves to train with Switchfire. What will she learn in the Drazel universe? And will she return in time to investigate God Tech? These questions and more will be answered in the next chapter of Chaotic Universe. End of chapter 13.